On September 10, 2025, the Supreme Court delivered a landmark decision that sent shockwaves through the nation's political landscape. In a ruling that will reshape presidential power for years to come, the justices made it clear that the balance of power between the branches of government is not to be taken lightly. The court struck down President Trump's sweeping global tariffs, declaring that such impactful economic policies cannot be enacted by the White House alone, no matter the urgency or scale of the issue at hand. This marks a pivotal shift in American governance, reasserting Congress's vital role in major national decisions and placing a powerful check on the executive branch's reach. The Trump administration had argued for broad presidential authority, citing national emergencies and the need for swift action, but the court disagreed, emphasizing the enduring importance of the constitutional separation of powers. This decision recalibrates power at the highest levels of government, ending a policy that was central to Trump's second-term agenda and sending a clear message about the limits of executive action. The legal battle over the tariffs culminated in this dramatic Supreme Court showdown, a case that has now redefined the boundaries between presidential and congressional authority and set a new precedent for future administrations. Ultimately, the ruling is a powerful reminder that the president operates within a system of checks and balances, and that sweeping economic powers, especially those affecting millions, belong to Congress, not the Oval Office alone. This moment redraws the lines of authority for generations of presidents to come, ensuring that the foundational principles of American democracy remain strong and resilient. To understand the Supreme Court's decision, we need to look back at a pivotal moment in recent American history. In April 2025, President Trump stunned the world by announcing a sweeping set of global tariffs, a move that would send shockwaves through international markets and diplomatic circles alike. Unlike previous, more targeted measures, these tariffs were broad and uncompromising, affecting nearly every U.S. trading partner. The administration's goal was to protect American industries, rebalance trade relationships, and send a clear message that the status quo was no longer acceptable. The White House viewed tariffs as a powerful tool to pressure foreign governments and companies hoping to revive domestic manufacturing, reduce the trade deficit, and restore what it saw as lost American jobs. But the move was not without controversy. Economists across the spectrum warned of higher costs for consumers and businesses, predicting layoffs, reduced investment, and a possible slowdown in economic growth. For Trump's supporters, the tariffs became a symbol of his commitment to American workers and his willingness to disrupt the global order. For critics, they represented a risky and unpredictable experiment with the world economy. This high-stakes gamble deeply polarized business leaders, lawmakers, and America's closest allies. Despite mounting criticism and warnings, the administration pressed forward, determined to reshape the rules of global trade. The tariffs were more than just economic policy, they were a bold political statement, signaling the dawn of a new era in American trade relations and a willingness to challenge decades of established practice. By acting unilaterally, the president demonstrated a readiness to use every tool at his disposal, regardless of warnings from economists, business leaders, or even America's traditional allies. The move set the stage for a fierce legal and political battle, as opponents quickly challenged the administration's authority to impose such sweeping measures. The consequences of this bold economic gamble would soon reach the nation's highest court, where the future of American trade policy and the limits of presidential power would be put to the ultimate test. The tariffs sparked immediate legal challenges from businesses and industry groups, who argued the president had overstepped his authority. The central question: did the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, give the president the power to impose such sweeping tariffs? The administration claimed a trade war was a national emergency, justifying broad action under IEEPA. Opponents countered that IEEPA was never meant to allow the president to restructure global trade or tax all imports without explicit congressional approval. Lower courts largely sided with the challengers, ruling the tariffs illegal, but allowed them to remain in place pending appeal. The stakes grew as the case reached the Supreme Court on an expedited basis. All eyes turned to the justices to resolve this fundamental conflict over presidential power. The outcome would define the limits of executive authority in economic policy. The Supreme Court's decision did more than settle a tariff dispute. It made a powerful statement about the separation of powers in our government. The majority ruled that President Trump exceeded his authority under IEEPA, which was never intended for sweeping trade overhauls. Central to the ruling was the major questions doctrine. For actions of vast economic significance, the president needs clear, explicit authorization from Congress. The court found no evidence that Congress intended to grant such broad power for general economic protectionism. Allowing the president unchecked authority would upend the constitutional balance of power. The ruling drew a clear line. Major economic changes require congressional approval, not just executive action. This decision was a robust defense of Congress's constitutional role and a check on executive overreach by the president. The Supreme Court's ruling fundamentally changes how presidents can act on trade. For decades, presidents have used laws like IEEPA to bypass Congress on trade matters, but this decision halts that trend. Now, imposing broad tariffs requires clear congressional authorization, restoring Congress's constitutional role in trade policy. The president's ability to use tariffs as a unilateral negotiating tool is sharply limited. Future trade disputes will play out more publicly in Congress, increasing transparency and debate. Presidents must now build coalitions and negotiate with lawmakers to enact major trade policies. This shift marks a return to a more traditional, consensus-driven model of governance. Presidential influence on trade remains, but only in partnership with Congress. The era of executive-driven trade wars is over. The immediate effect of the ruling is the removal of the tariffs, lowering costs for American businesses and consumers. This change is felt across a wide range of industries, from manufacturing to retail, as companies adjust to the new pricing landscape. For many small businesses, the reduction in tariffs means greater flexibility in sourcing materials and products, potentially leading to increased competitiveness and growth opportunities. Prices for imported goods are expected to drop, easing inflation and supply chain pressures. Shoppers may notice lower prices on everyday items, while businesses benefit from reduced input costs. Economists predict that these changes could help stabilize markets and encourage consumer spending, providing a boost to the overall economy. U.S. trade partners, especially allies, welcome the decision, seeing it as a chance to repair diplomatic ties. The move is viewed as a step toward rebuilding trust and cooperation, opening the door for more collaborative international agreements in the future. However, future trade negotiations become more complex, as foreign governments know major tariff changes require congressional approval. This new reality introduces additional layers of negotiation, as both sides must now consider the legislative process and its potential impact on trade deals. The U.S. loses some leverage in talks, as the threat of unilateral tariffs is gone. Negotiators must now rely more on building consensus and finding common ground, rather than using tariffs as a bargaining chip. Some domestic industries like steel and aluminum may face renewed competition and pressure. These sectors could see increased imports, forcing them to innovate and adapt in order to remain competitive in a changing global market. The ruling shifts the focus from economic coercion to building international consensus. Diplomacy and multilateral cooperation become more important as the U.S. seeks to influence global trade rules through alliances and partnerships. The debate over protectionism versus free trade will now play out in Congress. Lawmakers from both parties will have to weigh the interests of their constituents, industries, and the broader economy as they shape future trade policy. The decision sets the stage for a new era of trade policy shaped by legislative debate. The process will likely be more transparent, but also more unpredictable, as competing interests vie for influence in the halls of Congress. America's approach to global commerce is fundamentally changed, ushering in a period of adjustment and new opportunities for both the U.S. and its trading partners. The Supreme Court's decision is a landmark intervention in the balance of power between Congress and the presidency. For years, critics argued the executive branch had accumulated too much authority. This ruling pushes back, especially in economic policy. Supporters hail it as a victory for constitutional principles, returning the power to tax and regulate commerce to Congress. Critics warn it may slow America's response to global economic threats. The decision signals a judiciary more willing to police the boundaries between branches of government. Its impact will extend beyond trade, influencing other cases on presidential authority. By clarifying that monumental economic decisions require congressional consent, the court reaffirms the system of checks and balances. This case will be remembered as a defining moment in the ongoing struggle to preserve the constitutional framework of American democracy.